Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast, the podcast with the highest ceiling, as my dog sneezes loudly in the background. I'm your host, Bryce Hendricks, joined as always by the great Stone Hansen and the wonderful Cooper Klein, and we're excited to be back. It's been about a month, a little bit more since we last recorded. We had to take a little bit of a break, after the draft, and then it ended up being a little bit longer, but we're hoping that this will kind of be the start of some more consistent offseason content. We got a lot of fun things planned, but before we get into too much of that stuff, we thought it would be best to break down a little bit of this draft and kind of recap our thoughts on it, kind of put a nice little bow on the cycle for us. We will end up doing some like rookie predictions at some point down the line where we're talking about rookie of the year. We'll pick all rookie teams, which is a crapshoot anyways, but we'll do it for you all. But this is a more long-term focused view of things. We're going to talk about draft grades. We're going to talk, at least with some depth, about all these teams and the fits of these guys. We will end up going through every draft pick. Some draft picks might go quicker than others, so I'll just let you guys know. But we're excited to get into it. Coopstone, my friends, it's been a while. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm extremely tired. I just got back from my home state, and so I'm a little jet lagged. But this is the shortest hiatus I think in Upside Swings history over the summer, and it was still a month, but hopefully not too long. And it's good to be back.
Yeah, some of our hiatuses have been like 5 months, so this was pretty nice. Sorry if you can hear any stuff going on in the background. Eventually, my guest room where I'm going to record from here on out will be suitable, but it's still a shithole. Even though I've had a month to clean it up, it's just too much. But I'm ready to talk about the draft. I'm finally ready.
Yeah, Coop, you're not the only one. I'm in my parents' house because I'm watching their dogs, and we just finalized to be renting a house for next year. It'll be our first time ever being in a house instead of an apartment, and so I'm not looking forward to the mess that will be a constant thing, I'm sure. But I am looking forward to all that. But let's talk about the draft. And the first pick was no surprise. And here's what I'm going to say: we will technically do grades. But I don't want anyone to get too lost in the letter grade of things. It's very subjective. We did not do any absolute science. The only specific science I'll give you is I'm going to reserve the plus for like the A plus for like perfect fit plus on my board value plus like the creativity. So like we'll talk about Cooper Flagg here. Cooper Flagg and the Mavericks draft as a whole is an obvious A grade. I think we can all speak for that. But I'm not going to give it an A plus because everyone would have picked Cooper Flagg. So that's my one little great thing. But let's talk about Cooper Flagg here. And I think there's a lot of intrigue. Obviously, Summer League had its ups and downs, as it does for every number one overall pick. The truth is, Summer League is a worse context for Cooper Flagg than even a lot of those other like super hyped number one overall picks like Wemby and Zion. Partially because listen, everyone is headhunting for like Flagg in Summer League. That's just how it goes. Everyone was headhunting for Zion. Everyone was headhunting for Wemby, and everyone is also trying to pick the holes in their game, right? And versus like no one picks the holes in David Jones Garcia's 23-point game, but everyone's going to pick the holes in Cooper Flagg's 27-point game or whatever. So I'll be honest, I didn't even watch like a ton of Summer League. Like I basically watched one Summer League game from every team and called that chill. Like I'm not. That's very not factoring into my evaluation much here at all. What is factoring into my evaluation is that Cooper Flagg's going to play the 3 like all the time this year. This Mavericks roster is fascinating. They have 2 like pure centers in Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford. Now Derek Lively sounds like he might miss the beginning of the season. And then they have Anthony Davis, who's at his best at center, and they have PJ Washington, who is also a 4 and might start. Is Cooper Flagg going to play the 2? What is this like year and future kind of building block? What is this all going to look like for Coop Stone?
Yeah, I think that it's not ideal, right? Like I think Flagg is best as a 4 at the next level, but I do think that this gives him an opportunity to maybe be in a position where he's forced to spread the floor more. And I wouldn't say that that's necessarily a weakness of his game, but I think seeing that on bigger volume just would give the team and probably everyone watching a lot more confidence in him as well, in his shot moving forward. And I think being forced into that role would be beneficial for him. We'll see how it goes long term. And even if it starts that way for the year, I don't know if it ends that way. Maybe they realize that this is not ideal, and at the trade deadline they look to move one of those pure centers, and they move AD to the 5. So I think how the first 4 or 5 months maybe go for the season will really determine how that looks long term for Cooper and his fit with the Mavericks. But I think really it comes down to he's so capable defensively to play on the perimeter that I don't think it hinders a whole lot of the Mavs' value overall. Like, even if he played the 2, which I don't have a ton of confidence will happen, and I don't think is a very good option offensively, defensively, like, he can do it. If you wanted him to play the 2, Flag is going to pay big dividends in that role. So I think you're extrapolating value wherever you put him on that end of the court. Offensively is more of where the question mark lies, but I don't mind experimenting early on in his career, because this is the time when the window is, you don't have Kyrie right now for whatever it's worth. So I think you have a little bit of flexibility to experiment a bit with him. And I don't absolutely hate the thought of doing that at this point in time.
I think there's also a world where Anthony Davis dies like 2 weeks into the season, and they just
metaphorically,
yeah, not literally, but like
one of his knees or ankles or lower back dies. Yes.
Yeah, where it's just this is every single year at this point. Every single year he gets some stupid injury. Even his eyeballs, can't take a beating. Like, as much as you want to look at this team on paper and jot it down for 60 wins, there's a very real world that by the trade deadline, it's Cooper Flag and PJ Washington and the ghost of Daniel Gafford in the front court, holding it down and just seeing what you can get. And as much as I do think Flag can play the 3. I think ideally you want him rotating in that Giannis kind of helper role. You want him in passing lanes. You want him rotating around the rim. And there's still ways to do that with him at the 3, right? You can have multiple helping shot blockers. Having, 2 of the best in the NBA when healthy in Anthony Davis and Cooper Flag, it's going to be a real boon for them. But I do just really worry that this is going to go from one extreme of Flag, you're going to go sit in the corner for a lot of possessions while D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Davis do a lot, to by the time the trade deadline comes, it's pretty clear Flag's like the best offensive option on the team, and he's popped up to 25 usage, and Anthony Davis is out, and D'Angelo Russell is getting cursed out for being Lakers D'Angelo Russell and not the point guard they need. So I do kind of worry that the Mavs are just a poorly run franchise, and poorly run franchises mess up. But I think he's pretty unassailable no matter what happens.
Yeah, I'd agree that I wouldn't overthink the fit for him long term. Now, there's the sneaking, reminder of Zion Williamson in the back of my mind, where I really worry about these teams that have these young, potentially transcendent superstars on their team that are like, okay, let's try and win right now. I'd much rather the Mavericks be bad for a couple of years and maybe add another high-level talent or 2. That's a big concern for me, but Flag is a much more malleable piece than Zion was. Again, I think the comparisons for Flag are much closer to like the Jason Tatums or the Cade Cunninghams or whatever, where it's like, I think there's a lot of paths to success here. Like Stone said, defensively you can do whatever, and this was absolutely the right pick. I don't think there's a ton more that needs to be said here. I am interested to see how this plays out. I don't really trust Nico Harrison, but I also do think that we can maybe overjudge someone for one trade. Now, that trade being the Luka Doncic trade is, obviously a big one, and he probably should have been fired right there. But I don't think this is someone who is awful at team building. I just think he would really probably egotistical and didn't really like butting heads with Luka Doncic, if I were to guess. I think that's probably a lot of it. Anyways, let's move on to the second pick. I think we all give that an A, right? Or does anyone have a pushback there? A's all around. Moving on to the Spurs. I think this is going to be a much more interesting discussion. So let's start with they take Dylan Harper at 2. They will later on take Carter Bryant at 14. And then I have not yet seen, I will check as we're talking about this, what their two-way signings are. I know one was not really from this draft. But Coop, I'm going to throw this to you. And Stone, I do want you to push back. Dylan Harper at 2. Where are you at? Where's your head at? How do you feel about that pick?
I mean, the talent with Harper, pretty obvious. The offensive talent, pretty unassailable as a guy who can get to the rim and just kind of mass produce some pick and roll reps. But I do worry that there were better looks on the board, especially for a Spurs team. I do think that a part of this calculus is that Harper is the clear-cut number 2 guy, so I can't fault them too much for as much as I want to be like, oh, well, there were 5 guys better by value on my board. This is what you had to do. If you land at 2 and you stick at 2, you're going to take Dylan Harper. I really don't like the fit. Maybe long term, if they get rid of Fox, if they move Castle to the wing, I think that's really interesting. I think there's something there with just a guy who can get downhill and at least I think what he's really good at is hitting rolling big men and as a passer. And if you have Wembanyama as your rolling big man, that's an exceptionally easy pick and roll to generate a ton of points per possession. So I do think that could be really interesting. I just worry that this is a Spurs team with very little shooting. Their totem pole of order of guys they want to hit just does not make any sense. I don't really get what the vision is. If you run him with Fox, I think he's gonna be worse than useless as an off-ball player. There's just not enough spacing on this Spurs team that at least on paper wants to try and win basketball games. And there's a real worry Harper's just not going to be a winning basketball player because he can't play defense right now, at least early on. So I can't give it any lower than a B- because they took the guy they had to take. But I do really worry that this is just kind of uninspired and that they have a lot of other guys who are in the way here. Stone, you like Harper more than I do. I'm pretty sure. So why am I dumb?
I would off the bat give this an A- because the criteria I would use for grading is an A+ is any pick I would have made if I were making that pick. And I really went back and forth with Harper and Knipple for the Spurs, which one I personally would have taken. So I can't go much more than A- because I might have made that pick. That's really the closest of any draft pick in this entire class for me was between those two at number 2 with the Spurs. So I definitely get the fit concerns, and I won't push too much on that because it is the best version of Harper is as a point guard, and you already have that with Fox. And however much we might disagree with it, it appears the Spurs might also view Castle in that way as well. We don't know for sure yet, but I think actually having Harper makes Castle more of a wing, and you get the most value out of Castle that you can in that way. But it doesn't appear that Harper will be able to be in that role with Fox there. I get the fit concerns. I also get the value arguments where it's this is the number 2 guy in this class, whether we agree or not. And the perceived value of if down the road, some superstar were to become available, do the Spurs have the perceived number 2 pick in that draft as, draft fodder in that sort of acquisition? And, if that's a calculus in that thinking, I wouldn't be surprised from them. And I would understand that avenue as well for them. So I think there's multiple factors to evaluate with this pick here, and the on-court stuff, is concerning to the degrees of fit, to the degree of value. I do think that Harper is up there with Knipple for me in terms of who I would have taken. So I think those are the different factors that I see, and just a sort of a brief overview of how I view them, without getting too in depth because we have a lot of names to get to. But I understand it for a lot of reasons.
So I've spent the most time thinking about this pick as compared to, all the others. I have all my I still I went back and listened to that Dylan Harper pod. I still stand by a lot of what I said there. I still think the passing stats way overrate the kind of passer he is, even with the acknowledgement that you know that Rutgers context was really bad. I think that I would not have made this pick. And I don't think this was the best pick available to them. I think that if the Spurs were at 3, I probably would have made this pick. And so it's easier for me a little bit to see this. And I also, again, this is one of those where I don't want to spend too much time on fit. I still don't think Steph Castle is particularly good. And I don't think he should have gotten in the way of drafting someone like Dylan Harper. So do I think that Dylan Harper and Steph Castle are a bad fit together? Yeah, absolutely. And I really question like what the Spurs' goal is here around Wemby, because I also don't think Dylan Harper's a particularly good jump shooter. I think he can be better in time, at least as a catch and shoot guy, than is maybe accredited to him. I mean, he did shoot like 40% on catch and shoot threes. He just barely took any. And some of that's that he's a really bad off ball mover. But what he can do, I think, is be a really interesting downhill threat next to Wemby, like who mentioned. Just throw it up to him all the time. If he's popping, be a part of things there. I think in schemed cuts and actions, he could be pretty deadly as a cutter, right? He just doesn't have great feel for it. He's not very active. The motor doesn't run super hot. But I do think he's just kind of a smart player overall. And so I do think there's maybe some untapped potential there. So I've gotten to understand this pick more. I'm still a little bit lower on the Harper as an all-star train than some. I think he is much more of like a kind of third player on most teams offensively, but I do acknowledge that there's some all-star upside there. And I think if that's where you felt like going with this pick, I understand that. It's not, he doesn't have the traits that I particularly value in my high-end star bets, but he still has star traits to a certain degree. So in terms of this pick, I'm fine with it because you probably are going to want a second creator next to De'Aaron Fox and Wemby. And I don't think that can be Castle. So I'm fine if you think that's Harper with taking that swing. And I think there's at least a chance that Harper could do that to kind of a sub all-star level to maybe solid all-star level. I just don't quite see the top end superstar stuff the way some people do. Even though I like the downhill driving quite a bit. But I was very encouraged by their pick at 14, Carter Bryant. This is absolutely the kind of pick that I really like next to Wemby. And I know Coop is going to have some pushback here, which I am looking forward to hearing. I acknowledge all the concerns with Carter Bryant. I just think that this is at 14, absolutely the type of guy the Spurs should be taking because he's a 3-4 who can really defend. If he makes shots, man, what a fit next to Wemby because he can be a really simple just cutter. He doesn't have to be much of a playmaker. This is a team where he could do his stand in the corner, cut out of the corner, make simple one more passes, just be a part of things offensively. There's so little expected from him, but defensively, guard on the ball, guard off the ball, do all these things. I think he's a really fun player. This was a really fun pick. This was around where I think his range started for me. There were guys I was higher on, so it was not the pick I would have made necessarily. But I do think this was a very worthwhile pick, and I think it will kind of be consistent with my overall grade here. For what it's worth, I had Carter Bryant at 14. Now, there were quite a few guys that I had ahead of him that hadn't been off the board yet, and we'll talk about that as we go. But I do think that in a vacuum, I like this pick and I like this fit. Stone, I think you're going to concur with me. How did you feel about Carter Bryant?
Yeah, if I were making this pick, it would have been Carter Bryant, I think, for me as well. So I would give it an A plus by that measure. I think that the possibility exists for the Spurs to at some point have the best perimeter defender and the best interior defender in the league at some point throughout the Wemby era. And I think that would be made possible by Carter Bryant. Like, I think he has that level of defensive outcomes within him. The offense clearly has a ways to go, and that's not necessarily much to do with even summer league. I think pretty much everyone knew that before the summer league. It's probably going to take at least a year, most likely to really get to the point of you feel comfortable with him on that end. But the Spurs have plenty of offensive weapons, and if he's just out there as a defensive menace, like, I think the Spurs can make that work for the amount of time he needs to really grow and be. All he has to do is hit corner threes at a respectable rate. Like, that's all he needs to do to stay on the floor. I believe he'll get there. And if that happens, like, the juice is absolutely worth the squeeze with what he brings defensively. So I love this pick, and I think that having that combination with what he does on the perimeter and what Wemby can do, on all areas of the court, it can really anchor a special defense. So I really like this pick.
Time to be negative Nelly. The league is phasing out these low offensive feel, because Carter Bryant's defensive feel is incredible. I love the defense. More than anything, I like the defense so much that I had him like top 6 for a little bit. And then I remembered this is the NBA that has hated every single all defense, no offense prospect that I have loved for the last 5 years. Carter Bryant cannot dribble. Like, he's probably the second worst ball handler in this class. It's really rough. He doesn't pass. He doesn't cut. He doesn't finish. He doesn't really do much of anything, but he can maybe knock down shots. And so if he can knock down shots, I think that's a bench guy. And I don't think the pick is a bad pick. I just, at 14, if you get a guy who I think is a first round value guy, that's a fine pick. That's a fine pick. There were better picks available. This is like a B. I like it more than the Dylan Harper pick. I do really like his fit with this team, because if anybody is just going to be able to show up, if you could show up and hit, and if your whole job on offense can be just hit corner threes on any team, I would say, cool, go be a Denver Nugget. And second, I would say, go be a San Antonio Spur. And they'll figure out how to scheme you some bullshit and get you some good shots. And Wemby will throw you some nice passes, or De'Aaron Fox will hit you as you're the trailer in transition. He will be able to find easy buckets if he's capable of doing it. So I do like this. I do just worry that the offense is so bad that it's disqualifyingly bad. So I have to drag down our consensus a little bit here. So I'm ready to move on to my new hometown Philadelphia 76ers. If you guys
I think that's fair. For what it's worth, on this draft as a whole, I'd give it like a C+, maybe, like, and that might seem low. I work off C as an average, not B as an average, which is different from the American education system. But that's how I go off things. Stone, did you want to give a grade for the Spurs draft as a whole?
As a whole, I'd say A, because Harper was an A- and Bryant was an A+. I'll extrapolate the average there.
Sweet. All right, let's move on here to the Philadelphia 76ers. So the 76ers took VJ Edgecombe at 3. They took Janai Broom at 35 and gave him a full contract. And then, as far as I can tell, their only two-way that they gave to a guy from this class is Hunter Salas as an undrafted two-way guy. I have no idea how well he played in summer league. I have no idea if he is going to stay on a two-way. I did not even do a full scout on Hunter Salas. Actually, it does look like they signed Igor Milicic, but I'm not sure if that was to a two-way or to an Exhibit 10. So obviously those factor in a whole lot less unless we think there's like a crazy steal, which maybe you guys will talk about Milicic. But let's start with Edgecombe here. Coop, I want to get your thoughts first on Edgecombe here, because I think we all kind of like shifted on like who actually liked VJ Edgecombe the most. I think it might have ended up being you. I think I could be wrong. Maybe it was Stone.
I had him at like 10, so I
higher than me. That's
Okay,
higher.
I think I was highest then.
Okay, so Stone, why don't you tell us how you felt about VJ here at 3?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had him at 6 on my board, so it wasn't a crazy reach by any means. I like it more considering the other option seemingly was either Trey Johnson or Ace Bailey. Khan was the home run pick here for me, so it makes it's really difficult for me to get in the A's with that. I would give this a B to B minus for VJ here. I think that this high in the draft, it's more impactful not taking the best guy on the board. But I also think that if this is the process of taking best player available for them, I understand it with the current team that they have. The fit is a little awkward considering the fact that they have McCain, they have Maxey there. I don't really think that VJ's a 3 at the next level, especially early on in his career. I think that, one of those 3 is going to be sort of the odd man out in terms of starting lineups or anything. Probably VJ just because he's the rookie, less established. But I also think that they really need perimeter defenders. I think, if I recall, I was the highest on VJ's defense, and I think that he can provide that. I think theoretically, if VJ were to hit his higher end outcomes, he fits really, really well with Maxey as a 2-guard pairing. And I think that he is a piece of that starting lineup that can really push into what diminishing returns Paul George has given the Sixers over the last season or season and a half, maybe. And if you can not replicate what prime Paul George does, but at least add some of that perimeter defense that I don't think Paul George has been able to do at the level that he previously has, it's a big win for the 76ers because I think they really need that and are struggling with that. So it makes sense in that regard. I really overall question the Sixers time frame here. Like I think they're trying to toe 2 different timelines with Embiid and Paul George. And I kind of want them just to pick a direction and go with it. But in terms of I feel like I'm rambling too much here, but in terms of the fit, it's a little clunky for me, but I get the perceived best player available.
I'd like this a lot more. Sorry, just real quick. If they didn't then proceed to hand Nick Nurse Kyle Lowry and say go crazy, and also Eric Gordon, who I think defensively is like a kind of a best case scenario for VJ Edgecombe, just like a guy who is 2 size but is so athletic and so strong that he can guard up a lineup a little bit, gives you some switchability, really strong driver. And can maybe shoot the ball. I think that that's kind of a best case scenario there for them. But man, what are the Sixers doing? Just do something that's not pray Joel Embiid is healthy and Paul George is like a half decent player. Get Maxey some help. Let's either actually play young guys and build around them and not cut guys like Ricky Council, or just try and win basketball games right now, because I just don't get the direction they're going in. We've seen so many teams try this 2 timelines bullshit and it go nowhere. So I'm not very excited. The teams, I think it'll be more fun and athletic with a guy like VJ, but man, this is a weird draft for the Sixers.
What? Sorry, Bryce. One more little note here. I would say that I do understand from the Sixers' perspective that long term it is probably best to wait until PG and Embiid have healthier seasons than they previously had to trade them. Like you're going to get the worst value you possibly can for either of them at this point in time. So maybe waiting it out and hoping you can get 40 to 50 games out of a season out of one of them before moving them is the best case scenario. So I understand maybe why they haven't done so yet, but the 2 timeline thing I think is just too difficult a needle to thread.
So I think I come down just like really not liking this pick. The more and more I've thought about it since the draft, I actually think I've lowered on BJ Edgecombe since the draft, which obviously that won't reflect in my board really, but like I ended up with VJ at 12. The more I think about, the more I probably preferred Thiero and Carter Bryant to him, and maybe even Nick Clifford and Jace Richardson. Like, part of me feels like I should have put VJ all the way down at 16. And here's why I say that. I think one of the most overrated basketball things in general is pure vertical athleticism from non-bigs. I just think that it's an aesthetic bias that all of us have to some extent because dunks are the most exciting thing in basketball. But VJ is not a great advantage creator. He is not yet a great shooter. He is not particularly high feel. And I don't think he really is all that good at anything right now. Now that sounds obviously really harsh, but I mean that kind of more in a general sense. He is a jack of all trades, master of none 2 guard who doesn't have like crazy scoring instincts to me, and doesn't have particularly good playmaking instincts on either end either. I think there's something to be said for how productive he managed to be as a freshman. And I think there is a solid likelihood that he's at least like a fine NBA player. But I think I'm pretty low on the outcomes where he is like a serious like playoff changing type contributor. Like I think that's a misread of what his game is. I don't think he's that level of defender. I don't think he's that level of shooter or playmaker. What is he? I think he's a really potentially good off-ball transition player who can seem more effective at times defensively when he is not like the center of a scouting report. And there's an outside chance that he's one of those guys who like his mindset shifts as he gets to the NBA and he just starts using his athleticism more on defense. But I don't think that's a certainty. I think we kind of have some survivorship bias with projecting stuff like that. A name that we brought up quite a bit was like Norm Powell. I think Norm Powell probably just has more like verve as a scorer and more just kind of like natural touch and funk as a scorer. Like VJ, I think, is really similar to like a lot of like 4s in the NBA in terms of his skill set. And that is just a really tough thing for me when you talk about fitting into a backcourt that already involves, a guy like Jared McCain, and who I'm not even like as high on as some. Like he had a really fun, 3 weeks of his rookie season or whatever, and that was great. And I hope he can be a great player. He's very fun to watch and everything. But I'm just really not sure here. I'm not sure what the prioritization looks like. Are they going to bring Quentin Grimes back? How's that going to fit in with things? I don't know. I really just don't like this pick. As I look at the rest of the draft, once we get into the second round and stuff, like I'm less grading picks on like a pure, A through F scale, and I'm more just thinking, is there anything that really saves this draft? And I don't think so. I don't particularly like Janai Broom. I think Hunter Salas, again, I didn't even really do a scout on. Maybe he proved me wrong, but I don't love the process of one of my 2-ways is at a position where I already have like 7 guys and Hunter Salas is old. And then I like Igor Milicic fine, especially as a two-way. Like, I think he is the type of two-way who could actually probably give you some minutes early on in his two-way career, which is great. But I don't think there's like a ton of like long-term upside with him outside of like being a third or fourth big on teams, and there's value to that. But still, this draft overall, I think I'm gonna give it like a D or maybe even a D minus. Like, there's the one thing I can give it is they could have made a worse pick at 3. But that's really it. Like, that's really all the credit I can give. And I said to someone, right? I know people in the Sixers front office, and I think they're brilliant. I'm rooting for the Sixers, not just because they're in Coop's backyard, but because I know people that work for the Sixers, that I just can't help but want their success. But trying to be objective here, I'm just not in love with this draft at all. And there's nothing here that particularly saves it for me. Coop, Stone, where are you guys at here with your grades?
Milicic pick was cool. Getting a guy who's better than your 30s round, 30s pick for basically nothing is awesome. I do think Milicic could be like a really fun backup minute guy. He's better than, I think he's more fun than Andre Drummond at this point in his career. Like, can we get this guy some minutes? There's just nothing inspiring in this. There's not really any creativity. VJ was so chalk for this Sixers team. There was the Sixers fan who his name is escaping me now, but I see his TikToks all the time, who predicted that the Sixers would pick him like a month out from the draft because Daryl Morey is so predictable and their whole front office just does the same shit all the time. Absolutely nothing. He even predicted the Janai Broom pick too. Like, at some point you have to do something new. And I think just out of pure spite, I'm going to give this like a D, but for like actual value, this is like a C minus for me. So Stone, where are you at?
Yeah. I mean, I think they got a better backup big bet with Milicic on a two-way than they did Broom at the 35th pick. So I think that's just really bad value on it in a slot that at 35, you still can get I think you have a decent shot to get NBA players there. And I think it's a wasted pick. That sounds mean to Broom, but that's just kind of how I feel. I like both the two ways that they got more than the pick at 35 with Salas and Milicic. I like Salas just overall value-wise. I think I had him 40 to 45, somewhere in there on my board. And on a two-way, I think that's pretty decent value. But obviously, you can't grade to the same level that you can with the third pick. You only can boost your pick so high with good two ways. And the 35th pick, I was pretty low on. So I would give it a C plus personally, because I think I'm a little higher on VJ than you guys, and I like both their two-way signings, but it's not the direction it would have gone at either pick that they had.
Yeah, absolutely fair. All right, let's move on to I'm gonna get out ahead of this. This is my favorite draft. And I've liked it more and more the more I've thought about it. Even though there's 2 picks here that I kind of don't like, it kind of doesn't matter to me. The Charlotte Hornets take Con Knipple at 4. They take Liam McNeely at 29. They take Sion James at 33 and Ryan Kalkbrenner at 34. Con is the obvious place to start, and I'll start because I think I ended up the highest on him. I think I was, numerically, I think you can only get so high on it, but I legitimately think I was about as high on anyone as Con Knipple. I just love this pick. I just love taking high feel, elite decision makers with some real juice, both as an on-ball player and also just a high-level shooter. I think there's questions here, and I think there's a lot to be written in terms of how high the upside can be. But I just really buy Con. I think this is I think this is as good a bet as any outside of Cooper Flagg to be like a franchise-changing pick in this draft, to be the type of guy you can build your team around, and that's a damn good pick, really at any point in the draft. But at 4, I mean, I'm all in, and I don't want to get too much into it, but I love the potential fit with Brandon Miller or LaMelo Ball. I don't think you have to keep either. I think you could keep both, and it could potentially work. Now, that's a pretty flammable defensive group, but I think Con, profiles the best to me as a 2. I wouldn't put it past Con Knipple to potentially play some point guard in the NBA. That might be a hot take, but he would be the shortest of that group of Ball, Con, and Brandon Miller. What I really like about that group specifically is that LaMelo can provide the transition juice, and Con can be more of the half court lead decision maker. I think it's been somewhat under discussed that LaMelo Ball has never really been an efficient half court creator. Well, I think Con can be, and I don't think that Con is like some elite transition player, but LaMelo Ball is, and Brandon Miller just kind of is a consummate off ball wing who can do some secondary creation. I just think that's a really fun offensive trio. Even though I'm still not particularly high on Brandon Miller or even LaMelo Ball for that matter. Like I think both are probably a little overrated, even though I hate the term overrated, but just in terms of how they're viewed in general. But Con, just love this pick. Coopstone, do you guys have any thoughts on Con before we kind of talk about? We'll probably talk about those last 3 kind of in tandem. But what were your thoughts with Con here at 4?
Yeah, I mean, value-wise, this is the pick I would have gone. Fit-wise, I mean, because of the value, but also the fit, I think it makes a lot of sense. I would have gone here too. For a lot of the reasons you mentioned, I think that this gives the Hornets a real sort of identity offensively, where now you have 3 building blocks as different kinds of shooters, but very good shooters. And I think that this sort of lack of identity is something they've really struggled with. And having now got 3 guys that can really space the floor in different ways gives them a bit of that, at least on the offensive end. I think that there's going to be questions offensively, and I don't think personally that they answered them with the remaining picks of their draft, which we'll get to in a minute. But it's nothing less than an A+ for me because it's the pick I would have made. So I quite like this.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. Bryce kind of set me free on Con during our pod. Maybe I think that's my favorite Upside Swings moment ever, that Con podcast. It does not get enough love or enough views for – that was so fun. It was so fun. All 3 of us just kind of coming together on just like the old times, really, really coming together on a guy like that. He's great. I'm ready to move on to the other 3. At some point we need to speed up because in Upside Swings fashion, we are going long.
We are way over spot here, fellas. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Let's talk about for some of these guys as we get later, we can kind of just say like, don't like, and give like a little bit of reasoning. But I will say I like Liam McNeely at 29. I know you guys were lower on him than me. I understand why. I ended up with McNeely at 21 on my board, and I feel really happy with that ranking. And I think getting him at 29 is a great bet on someone who has real touch, real shooting upside, real wing size, has contributed to winning throughout his career, was playing a little bit out of position. I wish he was a little bit tougher physically. I wish he contributed a little bit more athletically. I have those concerns. I think he's probably going to be a negative defender, but I think this is a potential like real offensive threat as like a backup wing. That's pretty valuable to get in the late 20. If this is Taurean Prince, you just drafted at 29, that's a great pick. And I think that there's real upside for that with Liam McNeely. I think he's has some playmaking juice. I don't think there's like a ton of star upside, but I would not be shocked if this is like a starting wing sometime, just for, especially if he can move his feet just well enough to play the 2 guard, where it's like, hey, he's kind of a movement shooter. He can make plays off of that. He can turn downhill and get into his little floater game. He has a big enough body every once in a while that he can kind of bump someone and get fouled. He had a 40% free throw rate at UConn. I like it. Kalkbrenner and Sion James, I don't really care. I think Sion is kind of just not very good, to be honest. I don't think this was a horrible pick. I hate to say he's not very good. I know some geniuses that loved Sion James, and I didn't hate him. I ended up with Sion at 40. I had Kalkbrenner at 45. I don't really care about either of those picks. I think having them on full contracts is a little up or down. I still just really don't see the rim protection translating with Kalkbrenner. I just think his physicality is too much of an issue. Again, I don't know how it looked in Summer League. I know they won the Summer League championship, but I didn't really watch a ton. But the one game I saw, Kalkbrenner looked like he really struggled to me in terms of absorbing contact around the rim, which is something that we all talked about. I think Sion only played one game in Summer League. I believe it was injured for the rest of it. But he's someone who, if he shoots, he's probably a guy. I don't really buy the shot. I don't really buy the advantage creation off the dribble if he's not going to be a shooter. But I don't mind that pick to get some integrity. And I don't even mind the Kalkbrenner pick. I would have gone other places, but at 34, I'm kind of just whatever on it. I think there's a good chance that Kalkbrenner is like an NBA player, if nothing else, even if I don't think he's going to be a particularly high level one. Like if you get 6 years of a third big out of Ryan Kalkbrenner at 34, that's perfectly fine. So what are your guys' thoughts on those last 3 picks? And then do you want to give your final grade for the Hornets draft?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see McNeely or Kalkbrenner really as draftable, so it's hard for me to get too excited about either of them. Sion, I think I had in the late 40s, so it's a fine pick. Not who I probably would have taken, and I think getting 2 backup 3s or 2s that are kind of one-way players on different directions is makes some sense considering they're each on at the other end of the one way. But the con pick was so good and it's at a high enough placement that I can't drag my grade 2 down considering the rest of their picks. So I'll give it an A minus where con's A plus is diminished a little bit by the rest of the returns.
I like Sion James more than you guys. Tough, knows how to play with good players. Exactly the kind of guy that like NBA teams desperately need, but like don't want to draft or bring in because they're not fun and there's no chance they're a star. Teams need guys who give a shit and will give a shit every single night and will always play hard and will be leaders on the floor. I love Sion James. I think on a team whose only advantage, I think, in the half court is their 3-point shooting, Sion James is going to thrive. This is a guy who can really cut, he can really drive the ball, and he can really like make kickouts, keep the ball hopping. I think he's great. So I am really, really a big fan. I'll give them I'll just be different. I'll give him an A. Con's an A+, McNeely's an F. But I don't really care about pick 29 if you hit with an A+. And Kalkbrenner is a swing at the right thing. I don't like Kalkbrenner as a player. The Hornets desperately just need a guy who can maybe protect the rim long term. They just desperately need somebody to defend the rim. And at least they actually are prioritizing that guy and not a nebulous athlete who brings nothing else. So I'm a really big fan of this draft.
Yeah, for what it's worth, this is an A+ draft for me. All right, let's move on. The 5th pick, the Jazz took Ace Bailey. They also drafted Walter Clayton Jr. And I can't find it. I'll find it in a second. But they traded up to draft Walter Clayton Jr. At 18, and then they drafted John Tonji at 53. He's on a 2-way, and then RJ Lewis they got undrafted on a 2-way. We ended in kind of similar places, I think, on Ace Bailey. Coop, how do you feel about this Ace Bailey pick at 5?
Man, this is a Utah team that just doesn't have any advantage creation. Ace is like fine at hitting pull-ups, and if anybody can get the most out of Ace Bailey, it's Will Hardy, and that way I really like it. But this is a guy whose defense is completely nebulous. It's entirely a bet on something that does not exist at the moment. He's got the tools to do it long term. He's got the tools to do so many cool things long term, but man, he just doesn't put it all together consistently, and I do really, really worry about that. So I really struggle to give it anything but like a C-, like just below average. I mean, at 5, he's probably the best value play, but this is a guy whose whole thing is his shooting, and he's not actually like that good at shooting, and he doesn't do anything else particularly well on the floor either. So it's if anybody has the time to develop them as well, it's Utah. They need to be swinging into this rebuild, and they have been this offseason. But, man, I really, really struggle to see their direction long-term with this pick. All right, Stone, how you liked Ace, didn't you? How high did you have him?
I had him 8th on my board, so a bit higher.
8th Bailey?
8th Bailey, but to me, as much as I like Will Hardy, that the roster just kind of screams that this is a roster that is going to try and make Ace the star of the team, and this is really what I didn't want for Ace. 8th Bailey existed because there was a pathway to non-star Ace being really valuable to me, and I'm less confident that that exists on this Utah roster. Like I think that he might be pigeonholed to be this sort of star for them because they don't have an established run at this point in time. And I don't think Ace is that, and I don't think it's best for his development, and I don't think it's best for the team to get the level of production that would be worth the 5th pick. So I'm not a huge fan of this pick, even though I liked Ace more than you guys. I mean, I'd probably give it a C plus to B minus. And just to move on to the other picks real quick, the Walter Clayton, I like jumping up to get your guy. I'm a fan of doing that. It was probably the worst kept secret that Miami wanted him at 20. But it's fine. I think I had Walter Clayton pretty close to this range, so it's not like a huge home run. I'm interested to see what they do with he and Collier because I'm still pretty high on Collier, but I don't know how those two necessarily fit together considering the stature of them. I don't think we've seen a guard tandem that small in the league in quite some time. Those first two together, I would say, would be a B minus for me combined.
Before Bryce jumps into how much he loves Walter Clayton, John Tanji, very, very good at basketball.
Sorry, F overall for the grade.
John Tanji is awesome. I think I'm the highest person in the world on John Tanji that's not related to him. And I like that they're just getting rid of all these older guys and kind of bringing in younger versions of them who can maybe bring some value. And I think Tanji is like a perfect second round bet to stick for his toughness and just random offensive skill set. So I'm a big fan. Bryce, dote on your guy here.
Yeah, so I'll talk about Ace Bailey quickly first. I actually don't think he's being drafted to quote unquote be a star bet, really. Like I think the Jazz are fairly realistic about who he actually is. This was the one team, shocker, that I watched a couple extra summer league games on. He was mostly being used as like an off-ball scorer. He was using his athleticism to contribute on the offensive glass, which was nice. I just man, they handle it so bad. I can't believe the way some people talked about him. Like if you watch him actually play, it's a reminder that there are some people who legitimately only scout using highlights, or what other people say about a guy. Like, that's not to say that there's no star upside here. I think there's like maybe a slight bit of over exaggeration about how little star upside there is. I think there's just not primary creator upside. It's secondary scorer, like Lowry Markkanen type all-star upside. And I think that is potentially achievable here. I ended up pretty low on Ace. He ended up at 20 on my board. And listen, I don't love this pick. Or excuse me, he ended up at 18 on my board. I don't love this pick, but I can squint and see it. And I think that this is a better pick than, what the Raptors did at 9 or some other picks we're going to talk about down the way, because I think Ace has, despite his issues, more paths towards being a valuable player than he is sometimes given credit for, because it doesn't have to be star score, I don't think. In fact, I think that's fairly unlikely. I think that the paths are likely in other ways. in terms of Walter Clayton, I love this pick. Now it's not the pick I would have made. We'll talk about the pick I would have made when we get to the Heat eventually. But I think Walter Clayton is a really great pick. As much as I like Isaiah Collier, I'm completely fine with not factoring him much into your draft decisions. If you would have taken another non-shooting, pure downhill driving playmaking point guard, then I might have had some issues. But the truth is, like, Walter Clayton and Isaiah Collier might fit together. They might not. I mean, for what it's worth, they're both a little beefier. Walter Clayton is like an off-ball shooter. I think could potentially be really deadly. But if they can't fit together, they can't fit together. The best one's going to play. And at 18, you're not like throwing some pick away. They traded 43 and a couple future seconds as well as 21 to move up those couple spots. That's a steep price, but for me, that's worth it if that's what it takes to get ahead of a team that is going to take this guy. Because I do think Walter Clayton has star upside. I don't know if he showed it in summer league a ton, to be honest. The couple games I watched, he kind of looked like he struggled, and then I didn't really see very much. I wasn't watching it particularly analytically. For people that are going to complain about that, by the way, I think summer league is a very fun thing. I'm glad everyone loves it. I'm glad it's become this big thing for draft Twitter. I think the games matter for guys like this, basically not at all. If you're going to be on a 4-year rookie contract, I really don't care about your first summer league. The guys it matters for are the Quentin Jacksons of the world and such like that. Like, do you look like, hey, maybe we should really give you a shot at the David Jones Garcias? Do you look like we should give you a shot at a two-way? That's who it really matters for to me. I don't care about it for really any first-round pick, because first-round picks have 4 years on their contract, and they will get their NBA time to show it, or they won't. And so with Walter Clayton, I really liked this pick. I echo Coop as well at John Tonji on a two-way. It's exactly what I wanted him on. I want him on a two-way. He's old. If he can do it, we're going to know early. If he can't, he can't. There is a question. This team has a lot of guards with like Keontae George, like Bryce Sensabaugh is kind of a two-guard. John Tonji now. Now, obviously, you're not factoring your two-way guys into that much, but I do wonder how this rotation is going to be structured. All right. Anyways, as I was saying, I'm interested to see how this rotation looks. I think Ace Bailey might play the 3, might play the 4, might play the 2. Like, I think they're just going to play around with that. I think they want to be really bad. From what I've heard, the Jazz really want AJ DeMonsta, and I think they are going to do everything in their power to make that happen, including converting young AJ to the Church of Latter-day Saints. But anyways, that's kind of a joke. Shout out Kyle Filipowski, though. But yeah, no, I mean, even RJ Lewis, like, I didn't like RJ Lewis. In fact, I kind of hated watching his tape at St. John's, but that's someone who did a lot of things and is a plus vertical athlete with wing size. Like, in a scheme that I think is going to end up being very based on side to side movement and these sort of actions through bigs. Like, I think if I were to guess, Filipowski is going to be prioritized as like one of the lead offensive pieces this next year, along with like a Lauri Markkanen, in terms of like really using that decision making and DHO operation and such. I think Ace Bailey fits well in that. I think Tonji fits well in that. I think RJ Lewis could fit well in that, and I think Walter Clayton fits fucking excellently. And I think there's a lot to be written about this team, but in terms of this draft overall, like, even though Ace Bailey is far from the pick I would have made, I struggle to get too low on it just because it was never going to be Yakachonis, and that's who I had next on my board. I could maybe make an argument for Queen, but I don't love Queen for this team, to be honest. Like, really, it should have been Yakachonis, but I'm not in charge, so it's not going to be that. So it's like I can only get so down on it. So Bailey instead of like Trey Johnson, even though I had Johnson over Bailey, like, I think I'm kind of okay with. And so when especially like I just look at how like the next couple picks played out, I'm happier with Ace Bailey than I would have been with Jeremiah Fears, than I would have been with Jaeger Demon, or than I would have been with Colin Murray Boyles. And so even though I had Murray Boyles ahead of Bailey. And so I think I come down happier on this draft than I thought, especially, I mean, obviously I love Walter Clayton. So I think I'm going to give it a B, maybe a B minus, something like that, even though Bailey was not the ideal pick. And every draft from here until 20 will get taxed for not being the team that drafted Kasparas Yakachonis. But obviously we'll talk about that when we talk about it. Stone, Coop, what are your kind of final thoughts here on this Jazz draft?
Yeah, I would give it overall, I would say a B minus. Um, and the it is really funny that the Jazz just they love their wings and forwards tall and lanky, and their guards real short and beefy. They definitely have a type, um, and it'll be interesting just this year to see how it all ends up. I think they are in a position where they're obviously in a rebuild, but I think they're gonna really have to start figuring out who the long term building blocks for this team are. And, maybe that doesn't include a star right now. Um, but at some point, the calculus has to involve who that foundation is going to be laid upon. And I think that this is sort of the year to do that for them. So we'll see how it goes. But I was not heavily, over head over heels about it, but not super down on it either.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. There's cool guys in here, cool second round picks, but it does just feel like a lot more of on brand stuff for the Jazz to some degree. They got their guys. I hope Walter Clayton works in a fun motion offense. Please give John Tanji a guaranteed deal. Now we need to move on to the Wizards here at 6.
All right, let's get the boxing gloves out here a little bit. I think it's about that time. The Wizards at 6 take Trey Johnson. At 21 in that trade, they trade back with Utah. They had the 18th pick. They trade back to 21, take Will Riley. Then they take Jameer Watkins at 43. They got him on a two-way. And that's really it as far as I can tell. Then they have Kadari Richmond as an undrafted free agent on a two-way as well. Though I actually think they might have waived him. I don't see him listed on their real GM page. So they might have waived him. Too bad. I like Kadari, even though his chances of being an NBA player are just so slim. But I'll start here because I ended up the highest on Trey Johnson. I had Trey Johnson at 8. I would have taken him probably ahead of Ace Bailey. Not probably. I would have, even though I was just kind of saying from certain perspectives. I think Trey Johnson is a superlative shooter. He is one of the best wing shooters I've ever scouted. 6'6", long arms, good vertical athlete, even if not particularly good overall athlete. He has a lot of problems in his game that Stone is going to talk about. But when you're at 6, if you're not going to take Mike King, Kasparas Yakachonis, I think that this is probably close to as good as they could have done, in my opinion. Now, I think Coop is going to bring up someone who I would also have taken above him, who I think would have been perfect here. But I think there's a chance that we look back and Trey Johnson has a much better career than that person. And we don't fault the Wizards, even though I still don't know that the process was correct. I don't think Trey Johnson is going to drive winning on either end for this team. But what I do think Trey Johnson can do is give you give you a base of competence offensively because he is such a good shooter that you can run actions for, who can, even if he has the ball a lot, him taking off the dribble shots might be solid enough offense to like be worth like 26, 27 usage, right? Even if it's not great, it's like, hey, it's giving us this baseline of competence. We know we have Alex Sarr and Bilal Coulibaly who are hopefully providing this baseline of defense. Now we're putting, Trey Johnson and Corey Kispert and these shooting line, Bub Carrington around these guys who can make shots, or at least we hope can make shots. And we're just kind of going to figure it out. I worry that Trey Johnson can Trey Johnsonize the offense a little bit and that things maybe have to be about him and he has to learn how to be a better off-ball mover overall. But he's still young. He's just a really, really prolific shooter. he has a special skill with real size as a two guard. I think that matters. I think that's a separator. Stone, tell us why you are out on the Wizards draft.
It's really difficult for me to not give this an F because both their first round picks were taken like 30 spots higher than where I had them on my board between he and Will Riley. Like, as much as I might try to rationalize it, just that alone, I think, disqualifies them from giving it a letter grade any higher than an F. Um, I've stated numerous times, and people can go back and listen what I think really about um, Trey Johnson, but uh, for this Wizards offense that I think is still really trying to find itself and find its identity, I think Trey Johnson is like as far from the answer as you can get to really help push that along. Uh, I think we now have a really good understanding of the Wizards' process as a drafting uh, war room, which is like they really value youth like a lot. Bub Carrington, Sar, Koulibaly, like all these guys were some of the youngest in their classes. Obviously Trey Johnson now. Like I think they just really index youth a lot, and we're seeing that play out each draft now. But and Will Riley as well. But he wasn't as young as Trey Johnson. But overall, they just really value youth, and to me, that doesn't equate to higher levels of prospect. And we've talked about it in the past that age does not apply as a blanket statement to every prospect, and I think that it really does not apply in Trey Johnson's case either. There's just I think so many other better ways, including who Cooper will bring up with Derek Queen. Like I was lower, much lower than Cooper on Derek Queen, even though I still had him lotto. But like it just on paper, it fits so much better, I think. And if you are a team in the Wizards position, I think you've gotten guys, and now I think it's good to take those swings on guys that can drive winning, and I think that the Wizards missed on that. So I can't, as much as I might want to, I can't give it anything higher than an F.
Yeah, you should have taken Derek Queen. You have all these guys who like could be something cool if you had a real creator bet, and they don't have a single one. Like there's not a single guy on this roster I look at. Alex Sarr is the best bet at a creator in this entire team, and he was like historically inefficient for a 7-footer last season. That's crazy. That's crazy. At some point, like I get it, you're going to be cool and young, and maybe you'll attract a star and blah blah blah. But dude, you gotta like, you're Washington. You need to start operating like you're the Washington Wizards and bring in guys who could actually be a fucking superstar. I do really worry. I like Trey Johnson a lot more than Stone. I think he's good. Then they immediately shot themselves in the foot by getting Whitmore in by trade, and it just like I get it. You want youth, you want athleticism, you want shooting. You cannot get every single low field player in existence and put them on the same team and expect any kind of development. I get it. You have cool guys who could be steadying forces. Chris Middleton, always a great NBA player, super cool. But like CJ McCollum and Chris Middleton is your vets. These guys are gonna 5 years from now, they're gonna get their rookie extensions and then just start handing away NBA players' rights in CBA negotiations for like no reason. That's the kind of stuff we got going on here. I'm really not a fan of Washington's process, but I do like that they have a coherent strategy here.
They want Cam Boozer is what this
comes to. Which is fully valid. That process is fully valid. Being asked to get a really good player, but like you would have been asked if you had Derek.
Yeah. It doesn't matter who you took at 6, you would have been bad.
Yeah, you would have been asked. So just take a guy who actually like there's a good chance that you drop to 4. You could be the worst team in the NBA and you could drop to 4, and then you got nothing in your hand but Chris Cenac and the dust of what could have been Derek Queen.
My pushback on everything is that I just think I think you guys are just too low on Trey Johnson. Like, this is absolutely a guy that could be a star. Is he a star in the ideal way? No, he's not. But Coop, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What makes a star, Coop? What makes stars?
Oh, dude, you know my answer. It's special. The special is what
Special,
gives you stars. But here's the
special
thing.
skills. Trey Johnson, he might not be, but he might be a special shooter. There is, at least in my mind, a 5% chance he is a special shooter. Maybe not Steph Curry, but he might be a better shooter than Klay Thompson. He might be a better shooter than Ray Allen. If you drafted Ray Allen at 6, you are fucking running to the bank every time. Will that materialize with the Wizards? I'm not sure. I'm not sure it'll ever materialize, but I think there's a chance. I think it goes underrated that there are very few players ever this young to have this type of shooting track record. It just hasn't happened. The players with this shooting track record are either older, smaller, or they never actually shot this well. They just were viewed as this type of shooter. He is a freshman who has done this for 3 years, is young for his class, and has wing size at 6'6" with a 6'7" wingspan. I understand all your guys' all the pushback on him, all of that. I do. He's not a particularly good passer, though I think there's moments where that Texas context really hurt him. But he's not high feel. He doesn't play super hard. He's not physically imposing in either way. The handle is kind of bad, maybe really bad. But if he is a special shooter, that stuff doesn't matter as much. It just doesn't. It just and shooting is a skill that is malleable. It can exist in multiple spots on the court, and it can be used in different ways. Is this the team to use it? I don't know. And he obviously has to figure some things out. If he isn't going to be like a star with the ball in his hands, like he's got to figure some stuff out, either defensively or as a cutter. I understand all that. I do. But he's 18 years old, and he's a special shooter for that age. And I think there's a chance that he's a special shooter in the NBA.
I don't want to spend too much time going back and forth on this, but I will just say that we're seeing special play out with like Cam Thomas. I think is like a special scorer, like more than just a shooter. Like he can get to his spots and score really well, and he's so bad at everything else that like he's struggling to get the mid-level exception right now. Like I think we're seeing what happens with specialists. And I think that,
but here's the difference: is Cam Thomas was not this efficient as a shooter. Like Cam Thomas is a
different players,
yeah. But I think it's closer to like Klay Thompson, or it's closer to like JJ Redick. Like that's who he's closer to than like a bucket getter like Cam Thomas. Like I think this is a potential off-ball weapon because he's proven willing to do that. I mean, fucking Texas made him run off a pin down every play. Literally every play, like he was coming off those wide pin downs and bombing. And he shot like 38.5% from 3 on like a ton of attempts while taking exclusively that kind of shot. Like I can count the wide open catch and shoot, step in left, right shots that Trey Johnson got this year on all my digits. Like there's just not very many. He had to, and again, I completely acknowledge all of his faults. I do. I really, really do. But I think this is a perfectly fine place to swing on special. Now, I agree with Coop that it should have been Derek Queen. Like that, my Coop's contention, I think, is correct. I'd rather bet on a special advantage creator than a special shooter. But the truth is, there's also a lot of stuff with Derek Queen that we don't know about that, has been circulating that I hope is he proves everyone wrong and he becomes the next guy in New Orleans. But listen, it's hard to convince teams sometimes that they don't think a guy works very hard to take a bet on him. It's just that's basketball. I mean, people want to bet on guys that work hard. People fall in love with that stuff, maybe too much. Maybe that's the draft Twitter specialty, is that we actually don't get to interview these guys. But everyone says Trey Johnson works hard and no one thinks Derek Queen works hard. Like that makes a difference. I agree it should have been Derek Queen, but for it to be Trey Johnson is perfectly fine to me. Quickly on these other picks, Will Riley, not a good pick to me at 21. I think there are a lot better options, but he is super young. He has flashes. My thing is, are they actually going to let him play with the ball in his hands, or is he going to be, if he's like a pure off ball wing? I don't think this is going to work particularly well. If he gets to play someone with the ball in his hands, I think this could be a little bit more interesting. And then Jameer Watkins, I don't really care about. He's ancient. I don't know. This is a B draft for me, B plus maybe. Such an ardent defense for me to give it a B plus. Again, isn't the pick I would have made at 6. I mean, it would have been Cosperis, or it probably would have been Derek Queen, because Derek Queen and Alex Sahar is just too good. But I think that first pick is defensible. I think Will Riley at 21, well, I don't like it, is defensible. Like, there's plenty of smart people that had him as like a lottery level guy. Again, super young, pretty looking jumper. Some obvious ability, like he can actually dribble at like 6'8". Like at a certain point, like that's worthwhile enough to be like a top 45 guy, at least if you can actually dribble while being 6'8". I think all the connective stuff in his game is pretty bad right now, but he's super young, so whatever. But that's where I'm at. What's your guys' final grades here with this?
F.
I won't go that far, but I also just don't like Will Riley, and Jameer Watkins is like fine. I get it. 6'8" guy who can dribble. That's a guy. I'm not into it. I don't think he really does anything here of value.
Yeah. All right. So now let's talk about the one that I'm sure everyone in some ways has been waiting for. New Orleans Pelicans at pick 7. They take Jeremiah Fears. Okay, up and down pick. I think we're all going to have some specific thoughts on that. Stone might feel differently from Coop and I. Then they take Derek Queen at 13, but they weren't at 13. They traded 2026 unprotected first to the Atlanta Hawks to take Derek Queen. Then in the second round, they get Micah Peavy at 40, and UDFA, they take Hunter Dickinson on a 2-way. I have not seen Micah Peavy's contract. I'm guessing it's a 2-way. Let me see if I can pull that up really fast. I do like Micah Peavy for what it's worth.
I believe it's fully guaranteed.
Nope. He's signed a full second round contract. Do we want to start mean, or do we, Stone? Why don't you tell us why the Jeremiah Fears pick isn't a complete unmitigated disaster?
It'd be a lot easier for me if they didn't take Derek Queen right after. I think that Fears to me is the point guard star bet that the Pelicans need. I don't think they have that. And obviously, you two probably feel differently, but if you were to see him as that star bet, I think it makes a lot of sense for a Pelicans team that does not have an established long-term point guard of the future. And I think it's going to take developmental reps to get there, and it might be pretty bumpy up and down. And I think that is a really interesting concept, considering that Zion is no longer an 18-year-old, that you have that sort of timeline, I think. But, maybe that they see it differently. But I think that this is an extremely athletic pairing between he and Zion that, regardless of how we might feel about Zion, it seems like that's their future piece, no matter how much it may be the wrong move. And it's a really great athletic pairing. But to parlay that into Derek Queen, it's really on court makes it questionable because now you have two very different advantage creators that neither of them are strong shooting bets alongside your quote unquote franchise player who's also not a shooting bet. And no matter how much Cooper likes Derek Queen, I think that trading your 26 first is indefensible to move up to get Derek Queen. Even if it was at pick number 2, like he had him, like I don't think that you can justify that. And and I think it's completely faulty asset, not even management, but knowing what you have. It like you're completely are underestimating how poor this team is going to perform next season by trading that 26 first away. And I think you've completely missed the mark on who you may have just drafted to be able to justify trading that pick. So I think that on court, it's very questionable in terms of the fit in the dynamic of these two guys long term paired around their franchise cornerstone of Zion. I don't think either of them fit particularly well with each other or with Zion. And I do think that moving one of the best assets across the entire league in order to make that happen is as bad of an asset management as you can get.
If you want to see heartbreak live on stream, go back and watch the Derek Queen pick in real time on our stream. I actually it's pathetic to admit I almost started crying. I was so upset. I was so to be fair, I was so emotionally overwhelmed by like moving and driving to a new place and doing all this stuff that like that very much contributed to it. But I was like actively upset when they picked Queen. Awful trade. Derek Queen is forever going to be tied to an awful trade. The Pelicans stink. They will always fucking stink. The West is so good this year. Do you understand how good you have to be as the New Orleans Pelicans to not make this trade stink? You have to be a top 6 team because you're not winning in the play-in. You are not beating good teams in the play-in, so you have to be a top 6 seed to make this trade worth it. And even then, you're probably giving away the 15th pick, which like in next year's class is fine. And for Derek Queen, a guy I believe in, that's awesome. The process here is just so awful. This is probably the second worst process of any draft we're going to talk about. We'll talk about the actual worst one in part 2.
It might be worse. I think we'll have this discussion.
No, it's not. I think we can make a case. Not worse. I think you can make the case. The Nets tanked their franchise for probably the next 6 years. They could get AJ DeBonson next season, and they would not be in a better position. They would still be in a worse position than the Pelicans. That's how firmly I believe. We'll talk about it tomorrow. But Queen is at least a guy. Queen is a guy, and even if he's fat, he still kicks ass. He was kicking ass in summer league. He had the worst start of any summer league game, and then he came back, and in the second half, he was awesome. And he still grabbed like 15 rebounds, and he still gets easy buckets, and he still creates advantages. And then you pair that with a guy like Fears, who just holy shit, dude. This guy, oh my God, actually made me so mad. You can talk about star bet all you want. Fears does not play a winning brand of basketball. And I don't think it's in there for him to ever do it. He has to create so many advantages and learn. Like, I get it. In theory, the easiest thing for so many guys to do is to really learn how to exploit the advantages they create. And guys like Fears can really create these huge advantages. But like Fears is so far behind. He's so far behind that I think he would have benefited from staying in college. Like there's not very many guys that like have a real shot at going top 10 that I would be like, please just go back to college. But Fears like actually needs the development time, and it's just not going to happen. New Orleans apparently wants to win. They don't want to rebuild, and Fears is going to suffer. I think Queen is going to suffer. I think Queen's pretty unassailable. I think he's going to be cool wherever he goes, but just awful. Seeing your favorite player drafted by a bottom 5 front office in the league is a gut-wrenching experience, and I hope none of you ever go through that like I had to.
I will real quick hop in here and say that I'm not even sure if the Pelicans know that they want to win, because I don't think you keep 2 lotto picks thinking you're going to move up into a
Pool though, right? Like you get Pool, and you like that's like an obvious like, oh, I think we're gonna step up. Moving CJ for Pool, oh yeah, I mean Pool at one point contributed to a good team. CJ McCollum contributed to like maybe half of a good team ever.
But
Sorry, CJ, you can call me a hater, but
despite that, you're now banking on two guys that, as much as I like either of them, or how much you might like Queen, I think both of them, no matter who you are, if you're not Cooper Flag, you're probably going to be a negative player in the NBA as a rookie, and to bank your hopes on that level of development as a team on two guys that need that much development as rookies, and pin your hopes and dreams on, probably a top 5 or higher pick for next season, is insane. Like, I don't think, I don't know if the Pelicans know that they want to win next season. I actually don't.
I think that they think that they're doing some 2 timeline shit. Like, genuinely, they think that they can bring Fears and Queen off the bench because they have plenty of front court players and they have plenty of backcourt players in theory. And they're going to bring these guys off the bench, develop them long term, and see if they have something there, but then also win games with a core of DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, Trey Murphy, who's like actually incredible, Zion.
But not really DeJounte, right? Because isn't he out for the year? Like,
oh, is he? I don't remember.
Yeah,
I cannot
I don't know
keep
that
track
he's
of all
out,
the
I don't know that
injuries.
he's out for the whole year, but not to interject too much here, fellas. But what I will say is I do want to start with some positives as I give my takes. I think Micah Peavy is a great pick at 40, like unmitigated. I think that's a great pick. It's a different front office, I believe, but this is a team that is hit on these types of picks quite a bit. Like, one of my comparisons for Peavy, which I know Stone hates when I do these, but I think he could absolutely be the Najee Marshall of this draft. Like, he's a little smaller, more of like I would say like a 2-guard defender who can play the 3. Like, you kind of hope he could be kind of like a KCP defensively with kind of the more Najee Marshall offensive skill set. Now, he's already old. I don't know how he played in summer league. Probably trash. I have no idea. But I like PV a lot, and I think that's a great pick at 40. I think what the path to minutes looks like, I don't know, but the fact that he got a full contract to me is promising. And the truth is, you can't have, this is a phrase that gets said a lot, but you can't have too many wings that can contribute on both ends. I think he is a really good defensive player who has at least paths to being a competent offensive player, which he had a slightly quicker first step, but still. I like PV a lot. I like Derek Queen in a vacuum, but yeah, this is an awful pick. I mean, an unprotected first, or an awful trade, excuse me. An unprotected first is insanity. I mean, I don't know what this team thinks they are, but that's, and listen, it's really early. I think people are, and even I was doing this, maybe getting a little ahead of ourselves, saying that the 2026 draft is going to be that crazy. Like, I think, some more questions about Darren Peterson than some. I'm really high on Cam Boozer. I think the Boston and Peterson are like a tear down for me. Like, I think they're probably worse level of prospects than like Amen Thompson. I think, like, at this point in there now, they're, I think, younger than Amen was. But anyways, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But I'm the depth of that like lottery, I'm not sure on. There's not a ton of returners that I'm like, other than Bennett Sturts, that I think are like going to be super high level players necessarily. I think people are maybe getting a little bit premature on how they're talking about next year's draft, but that's still a lot to get up to move up 10 picks. And I like Derek Queen a lot. I'd give up a lot to move up those 10 picks, but also you probably should have just taken him at 7, because I think Jeremiah Fears is bad. I don't think that I think he is the exact type of player that gets overrated, because handle is one of those things that feels so hard to teach, and he has this natural flow and cadence and this real kind of ability to go from like herky jerk lateral space creation to downhill creation. But I'm not sure I buy the shot, and I really, really do not buy the passing. And that's a bad combination for a top 10 pick who is, this size. Listen, if he turns out to be Colin Sexton, you're probably fine with it at 7. But I I just really don't understand this pick, and it's just not one I would have made. The one thing that he was productive at a young age. Oklahoma did a great job at putting him in places to be successful, and even though it wasn't a gray space team, like, he was productive. Like, I don't want to take that away from him. I think there's paths to success here, but point guard is such a specific position, and Jeremiah Fears just does not have really any of the traits I look for outside of functional handle. And even still, I'm not even sure, like, the handle is that, like, elite that it overcomes some of these other deficiencies. I would not have drafted him this high. I wish the best for him, but I think going to this team is about as bad a thing that could have happened to him too, because what is this even going to look like? So I'm really low on that pick, and it makes me lower on the Queen pick because, again, you could have just had him at 7 and let Fear, because my thing is too, like, if the Pelicans will take him at 7, like, the Nets probably take him at 8, but then, like, he might have fallen a ways. Like, I think there's this weird thing teams get where they're like, man, this is the guy that happens to be here, and they just take him. And I'm just not sure that was a great process. And that trade was just awful. I mean, listen, as much as I like Queen, and I think there is still a non-zero chance in my mind that Queen ends up as the second best player from this draft. And even still, I don't think I can give this draft anything but an F. I just can't. I can't bring myself to do it. And Queen is the pick I would have made at 13 probably if I was there. Him or Kasparis. But this team is such a mess, and I just can't get over that. And so that's where I'm out. Coop, Stone, what are your kind of final grades, final thoughts here?
I think that I'll wind up giving it a D, just because I, on the surface, like Fears and Queen to an extent. But even if they took Queen at pick 7, I wouldn't get it. Even if you're like Cooper that has Queen at pick 2 and he's the clear BPA, you cannot be a successful NBA team with 2 bad defending in space, non-rim protecting, non-shooting big men on the court together. You can't do it. And I have no idea how you play Zion and Queen together. And if Zion is, for however bad of a choice it is, your franchise player, I don't see how Queen is not just, you're drafting him at 13 to be a backup full time, because that they can't coexist on the court together, no matter where you took him in the draft. So I don't get it at all, and I think the pick was really bad. So I'll lower my grade to a D minus. It's as close to an F as you can get, though.
I think grade wise, I'll give him an F. But there's a world where everybody gets hurt and we get to see Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Derek Queen share the floor. And that's the world that I live for, because that is, I think, the only way that the Pelicans play winning basketball this season at all. I don't think there's a single other pathway to them winning basketball games, because this roster's a nightmare. The roster stinks. The players on it stink. The GM stinks. The coach stinks. There's not a world where they win basketball games without, hey, maybe let's put our 3 most interesting players on the court together and see what they can do. So I hope that happens. And then Jeremiah Fears gets traded, or actually then all 3 of them get traded to a real basketball team. And the team that employs Zion Williamson gets burned to the ground and shipped to a new state. That's my hope.
When Derek Queen is playing in Seattle, Coop. Oh, man.
That's going to be – dude, they're going to do the expansion, and then he's going to get traded to Seattle, and he's going to bring them a chip. I can see it already, dude. I'm excited.
I hate to tell the New Orleans people, but it won't be expansion. All right.
Dude, that city does not care about basketball, man. I don't think there's a single person who is from New Orleans listening to the show. So I think we're fine.
All right. Well, that's all we got. We appreciate you guys listening. We are splitting this into 2 parts, and if it seems like, man, you didn't talk about very many teams in this first part, you're correct. Our next part will cover hopefully the rest, because if not, then that's going to be a problem. But we'll get that out to you guys probably in about a week or so. And then hopefully, some more. We're going to start doing some redrafts and some fun stuff there, which is a great chance to go and revisit things. And a notion I'm looking forward to challenging is that the only 20 players from every draft, or exactly 20 players, or whatever. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to redraft first rounds, so we're going to have to come up with 30 guys somehow, some way. So that's going to be a really fun time. I'm not sure yet if we're going to do it like Snake, or how we're going to go about a redraft. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. But anyways, tune in for all that. If you guys have any ideas for some offseason, I hate to call it content. So if you have any ideas for stuff for pods you'd like to listen to during the offseason, let us know. We're pretty open. Obviously, there will be some ups and downs in terms of times and when we can get things recorded. I'm just letting you guys know, but we're going to try and be as consistent as possible, every other week or so, every week when possible. So for Coop at @Ali_Roop_Coop, for Stone at @Report_Report, I'm at Bryce114. You can give us a like, rating, review, all that fun stuff. This has been the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast. We hope we hit our ceiling. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Upside Swings NBA Draft Podcast here on YouTube. If you want to check out more of our stuff, you can follow us on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. You can check out our website, upsideswings.com. You can follow all of us on Twitter, subscribe here on YouTube for more content coming down the line. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know your thoughts on this pod and, our process in the comments. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
And the Will Riley pick, I was not a huge fan of. It was not someone that I probably would have considered for any
he's
team.
On Washington. He got traded. That's what
the
trade was.
Just kidding. Forget that. But yeah,